for July 6, 2026. We will have a roll call of members, starting with Councilor Register.
First register.
Cardin Welsh.
Jim Lawson.
Mike Lehrman.
Darrell Ford.
Joe Friedman.
Jay Goose.
Heather Grant.
All right, so I don't know if anyone is on Zoom.
There's no signal.
Don't see the signal yet. All right. Anybody like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move it.
Okay, second?
Second it.
Okay. Any discussion on it?
Yeah, I would like to have a few questions on, in the consent agenda, on item B, the Bennett Road culvert. I was wondering if we could maybe set that one aside off the unanimous consent so we could ask some questions.
So we will pull a B, a
Yep.
9B.
9B.
Okay. And any other changes? All in favor of approving the agenda as modified? Favor of approving the agenda as modified?
Aye. Well,
Any opposed? The agenda then is approved as modified. And Councilor Friedrichs, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Friedrichs.
All right, thank you. And our administrator.
And Todd Zelig.
Very good.
Who's babysitting? Who's babysitting?
Shift change.
So our, we have a resolution in thanks and for recognizing Rachel Stevens for her 14 years of dedicated community service to the town of Durham as a DCAT control room technician. And we're happy that you're here tonight. I'll read from our resolution. Whereas the Durham Town Council desires to formally recognize Rachel Stevens for her service to the Durham community over a span of 14 years while serving in the capacity of DCAT control room technician. And whereas Rachel began her service in August of 2012 at a time when technology for recording town meetings was still limited. And whereas she has faithfully made herself available to broadcast and record public meetings on Durham Community Access Television through both clear and inclement weather and through numerous iterations of complex technological advancement. And therefore, I move that the Durham Town Council, the legislative and governing body of the town of Durham, hereby adopt Resolution 2026-10 recognizing Rachel Stevens and expressing its gratitude and appreciation on behalf of the Durham community for her many years of dedicated public service and for the selfless time and efforts she contributed.
second.
I think it's the second. I'd like to say thank you very much for your service. Yes.
Rachel, I want you to know that Luke really wanted to be here, but he has a family obligation. He couldn't do it, so he asked me to tell you that how much he appreciated everything that you've done.
Thank
and
you.
He's sorry he couldn't be here.
Thank you. He actually sent me a message, so. Just to say something really fast on my end, when I first started working for the town, I was a retail manager. And in all that time, I grew into being a banker, and now I am a banking corporate facilitator. So I have a very different life than when I first started here. And I grew up in Durham my whole life, out in the Johnson Creek neighborhood, out on Route 4. And I didn't go to Durham schools. So people always said to me, Rachel, do you know so-and-so? Oh my God, you grew up in Durham? Do you know so-and-so? And I didn't know anyone. So this was kind of a cool way for me to keep my connection to the town throughout all these years that I never really felt that I had. So thank you. I'm gonna spend some more time now because my life has also changed since I started here. My son is now 4. He's the guy in the orange shirt, not the guy in the black. and I'm gonna spend some more nights doing bedtime and books with him instead of doing meetings here. So, thank you very much.
Good choice.
We'd like to have a formal vote on that resolution. Council Register.
Aye.
Cardin Welsh, aye.
Jim Lawson, aye.
Mike Lehrman, absolutely aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
M. Friedrichs, aye.
Jay Hughes, aye.
Heather Grant, aye.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, Richard.
Y'all have a good evening.
We have one other special announcement tonight. It's an acknowledgement of the town of Durham receiving the 2026 Plan New Hampshire Award of Excellence for the Madbury Road Complete Streets Project. A little background on that, they pick a select few projects around the state of New Hampshire. This year, the other winners include an affordable housing project in Nashua, the brand-new apartments in Dover out on the island called the Truett, that people know it, that's a big project. The Easter Seals project up in New Hampshire Military and Veterans Campus in Franklin, New Hampshire. The Rockingham Municipal Complex in Brentwood. The Gather Community Food Center in Portsmouth, but our Complete Streets was recognized, even though not complete yet. The concept and what's been done so far was recognized by Plan New Hampshire. And so it showed Durham in a very good light, and we're happy to acknowledge that on all the good work that our Department of Public Works has done.
I think we are the only transportation project amongst those, right?
That's correct.
So that's kind of cool that
Yes.
everyone else was a building project.
That's right.
And I'm sure we'll appreciate it when we can get out of town a little easier. My wife was leaving today, and she said, she called me and said, I can't get out.
Oh,
She came out of Emerson, and she couldn't
Yeah.
turn right and, to get out. to
Been there,
Route
done
4.
that. I had that today as well. I'm like, oh, I never knew I wasn't going to be able to make a right out of here.
Apparently now you can go through
Yeah, you go
Lundy and,
Around and you go around.
and around.
Yeah.
So,
Very nice.
I just can't wait for the traffic to end on Emerson.
So,
Good for you.
also, I'll go ahead on the next item and make a motion that the Durham Town Council hereby approve the minutes for June 15th, 2026.
Second.
Okay. Councilor Lawson had sent in some notes that will be accepted as part of that change, approve the minutes
Yeah, I
as
did as
amended.
well.
Okay.
Jim and I may have had some of the same comments because I saw some were under what he said. so.
Okay. Does anybody have any other? Does anybody have any other changes? Okay, Councilor Grant?
Heather Grant, aye.
aye, Jay Hughes, aye.
And I forgot to look at the minutes, and I have to confess that I wanted to check that I was here that day. So if I,
It recorded them
You were-
Yeah.
you were-
Yeah.
here.
then I,
Joe Friedman, aye.
that they're accurate.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Mike Lehrman, aye.
Jim Lawson, aye.
Cardin Welsh, aye.
Church Register, aye.
Okay. There's no UNH report today. They are out of session, and so we'll move right to public comments. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak? If so, please state your name, your address, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening. Roger Hayden. I live at 4 Lexington Street in Dover, and my wife and I currently own 44 and 46 Main Street. It's been a nice festive evening so far. I hate to give you this little challenge here. The property's up for sale. I do have a P&S with a developer. However, the parking has become an issue. He has presented, I think some people have seen the presentation that he has, Nick Isaac, I believe, developed something for market level housing, which would be smaller apartment units, single or double, 2 bedrooms, to attract non-students, graduate students, other couples to start living in downtown, which would give a mix of ages, which I believe is what the town's goal is to start revitalizing downtown and have it not just students, have it a cross-section. So the developer has 18 spaces underneath. It's currently a 54-unit building on 44 and 46 Main Street. It's about just under 12,000 square feet, so it's a fairly good-sized building, 4 stories. But the parking, the other 36 spaces to have a space with every unit is now become an issue. Where would they park? And if there isn't anything in a reasonable area, I believe, my personal opinion is that the developer's not going to build it. It would fall back on my wife and I as being unsold, and so we put it back on the market. And if the current developer can't get enough parking for a mixed-use market rate housing, other developers are going to not take the time. So this is kind of the D-Day, in my opinion, for Durham. We need more parking to support the Durham Business District. Where it comes from, I'm somewhat familiar with some of the places in town. I'm not sure if they're good places or not. There's some parking here. All I'm here to say is encourage you is that this is it. This really is it. I've been in town for 38 years. I just was in town today. I was in over the weekend, over the last month. I have heard nothing but negative about the business district because it's just so quiet. You go out on, in town this morning, you get into town at 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock. There's 2 cars. What's going on? Basically nothing. And this discussion came up earlier in some of the other town council and planning board meetings previously when it was agreed to have 50 feet and 4 stories for a building. The structural design, I guess that comes under the technical review, but 50 feet and 4 stories allows for maybe higher ceilings. If a couple's going to live in that 2-bedroom apartment, they might want to have a ceiling fan in their bedroom. Well, you can't do that with an 8 or a 10-foot ceiling. It's one of those things. So I'm here to encourage you to really tackle the parking issue in a serious way with the long-term outlook that the business district in a Division I university town is a vital part of the affluence and the vitality of the entire town. I know Durham does a terrific job of coming down for specific days, Memorial Day, and some of the outpouring from the Durham residents is amazing. Beyond that, it's pretty darn quiet. Unfortunately, it has become a student-oriented for a lot of reasons. I know Linda, she worked at the university for 30 years. She knows a number of people, and a number of people she's been friends with are saying, well, why don't you come downtown? Well, there's nothing for me. Okay, I hear it, but what's going to get... you remember when Stuart Shane's was in town, high-end men's clothing store? I mean, a number of other things. You remember 25 years ago when the federal government started a program of let's revitalize small towns, the 4 pillars of a small town. Getting close to the time.
It is the time.
Yeah.
Sorry, we usually have a bell go off.
That's all right. No, it's just, I'm here to encourage you to really open your minds and move forward with something.
Can I ask Roger a
Thank you.
question? May I ask him a question?
This isn't really for that, but you can ask one question, yes.
Is your developer, has he told you that he's not going to rent those 2 bedrooms by the bed, but rather rent it as a market rate apartment? Has he told you that, or is he?
No, he is not. No, I haven't had a discussion further than the parking per unit.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it a little bit more in the roundtable, because I want to talk about it in the roundtable as well.
I just thought that
And-
Mr. Hayden might not.
Yep.
But,
Okay,
All
well,
right, thank you for your
thank you.
comments.
And good luck with this. I know it's a tough decision. Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, are there any other public comments? Anybody on Zoom?
No hands on Zoom.
Thank you. Moving on then, unanimous consent, we're going to pull item B, so the unanimous consent, I'll make a motion that the Durham Town Council does hereby adopt Resolution 2026-11, rescinding Town Council Resolution 2010-18, passed on November 1st, 2010, adopting the provisions of RSA 53F, Energy Efficiency and Clean Energy Districts, and designating the town of Durham in its entirety as an energy efficient and clean energy district to finance energy conservation and efficiency improvements in residential, commercial, and industrial structures. And further, that the town council, upon recommendation of the administrator, does hereby approve a special event permit application submitted by Kylie Martell, UNH Student Engagement and Belonging, to close certain sections of town roads for University Day 2026 to be held on Thursday, September 3rd, 2026. Is there a second?
No, it's a unanimous, okay.
You don't need a second for the unanimous? All right.
You still need a
You think-
second. You still need a second. You have to have unanimous. Typically we do.
Okay. I will vote with council register.
Curtis Register, aye.
Hardin Welsh, aye.
Jim Lawson, aye.
Mike Lerman, aye.
Harold Ford, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
M. Friedrichs, aye.
Jay Goose, aye.
Heather Grant, aye.
Okay, and I'm going to at least get started, make a motion, then we'll talk about this, but that I make a motion that the Durham Town Council does hereby, upon recommendation of the administrator, approve the engineering services contract for the Bennett Road Culvert Replacement Project with CMA Engineers, Inc. of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, in the amount of $443,100. Second from Council Register. And Councilor Lerman, you wanted to ask some questions about this?
Yes, just for the sake of going on public record and for the public's benefit, as well as my own, just in view of recent events, what is the status currently of the federal matching grants and the assurances that that money is there and available? And what, if anything, can you tell us about that?
Rich, do you want to cover that?
Sure. So my name is Rich Rain. I'm the Director of Public Works.
Gwyneth, we can't see Rich. There you
Oh,
go.
there he is.
Can't see me?
We can
Now
now.
we can, now we can.
Okay, great. So it's quite different than the NOAA money that we received a portion of for the Mill Pond Dam. This is money that has been set aside. It's a congressionally directed spending request. So it's something that has been included within the budget. We've already tapped into some of that funding for the conceptual design that we've done. And we've been assured, we asked the same question of the EPA who is administering this grant. We've asked the same question from them if there's a possibility that this funding can go away, and they indicated no, this is funding that has been allocated to them. We will be looking for an extension on the construction, on the overall grant for construction, and they've also indicated that an extension of a year would not be problematic, so we're in the process of doing that.
And the other question, which I guess is for Rich also, from a technical point of view, so you have this ongoing arrangement with CMA as your engineering firm. I'm just wondering, like, how often, if any, do you update, do a reality check in terms of their fees compared to others? I mean, this was a few years old in terms of the arrangement.
Yeah, it's a great question. We went out in 2024 for a qualification-based selection, and we had a formal RFQ that was issued. Several engineering firms, about 6 or 7, actually responded to that. We interviewed firms to determine if they meet the qualifications that we were looking for. It was quite comprehensive, and we awarded on-call engineering contracts to about 6 firms, if I recall correctly, and CMA happens to be one of those firms. So we have a contract in place with rates that are established, and we also have highlighted in that contract the overhead or multiplier along with profit. So it's pretty, typically something like that is usually done in a 3 to 5 year award. 5 is probably a more common time frame. And then we would go out again as we approach 5 years for another RFQ and reevaluate.
So the rates are based upon what you negotiated in '24?
Plus escalators, yes, plus annual escalators based on increases that are contractual.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other? No? Take a vote then. Councilor Grant?
Heather Grant, aye.
Jay Hughes, aye.
M. Friedrichs, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Mike Lerman, aye.
Jim Lawson, aye.
Cardin Welsh, aye.
Kurt Fraser, aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rich.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the award.
Yeah, and where'd the beard go?
That was off in the summer. Thank you, take care.
All right. We have a Citizens Committee appointment, and I think Cardin Welsh.
Yes, I'd like to move that the Durham Town Council does hereby, upon recommendation of the Zoning Board Chair, appoint Marjorie Smith, 100 Piscataqua Road, to an unexpired alternate position on the Zoning Board of Adjustment with a term expiration of 4/28. And I think
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. Go ahead.
I think Marjorie's just another very overqualified member of many of our, that we find in many of our, fortunate to find in many of our committees. Marjorie has served 13 terms in the New Hampshire House. I moved here in 1991, and she's almost for the whole time been one of my reps. She chaired the House Finance and Fiscal Committees, and she chaired the House Judicial Committee, among many other things that she did. She also has worked in the Kennedy and Johnson administrations and was assistant to the first chair of the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. More locally, she was the chair of the Durham Public Library. She served on several Durham Master Plan committees and was the treasurer of the Durham Historical Association. So I think she's well qualified to be an alternative member of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. And I heartily recommend that we approve this appointment.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
I guess I can just say one thing. And I should have done it at the last time that we appointed people. I happen to know one of the two people who I've served with them, so I knew what they meant, how they felt about the zoning town. And I meant to do it with the other person also. I just want to be sure that whoever we put on understands that the zoning is written is what the zoning board is working with. And that sometimes when I was on the zoning board, and I think Cardin and Jim may have seen that occasionally, and somebody will get in there and think, I don't like that zoning, these people should do something. And the end point of it was that we'd say, if you feel like that, change the zoning, don't do it. So I meant to, it should be a question that asks, I think, of everybody. I think Margie's great, and I'm going to vote for it for sure. But I think that we ought to think about that when we're putting people on the boards. I myself saw that there were some occasions where that was not done the way I thought it should have been done at the time. So just bringing that out. I'm going to vote for Margie because I think she's an excellent candidate. But I would love to have that question answered by anybody that we're appointing to the zoning.
The question being, will you follow the rules as written of the zoning?
And not, right, and not a feel-good thing about, well, that person really needs some, that's all.
I mean, hopefully that's something that the chairs go over with, but that it is an important distinction as well to understand. I mean, there's a legislative aspect to things in terms of proposing changes, but there's a judicial aspect as well where you can only,
Follow the rules.
right. You have to.
When it goes to court and you do.
What is on the books, whether you like it or not, is the ordinance. But I was just going to add that I think Marjorie Smith has done a very admirable job of, serving the town and working within the rules of government. And so I do not doubt that she would do a great job
I agree.
in representing a variety of, perspectives while following the rules of governance. So we're lucky to have her volunteering again for the town.
Yeah, I would just say that she was there for 30 years, and in 30 years, if you're paying attention, she probably pushed or voted for something that you didn't agree with. But she does it very, thinks things through. She's extremely intelligent. She's a great person. And if you don't disagree with someone over 30 years, you're just not paying attention. So,
I agree.
Good. All right, we'll take a vote. Counselor Ford?
Darrell Ford, aye.
Mike Lerman, aye.
Jim Lawson, aye.
Cardin Welsh, aye.
Curtis Register, aye.
Heather Grant, aye.
Jay Gou's aye.
M. Friedrichs, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye. And thank you, Ms. Smith, for agreeing to serve. We appreciate it. We have no presentation items today, but we do have a unfinished business and a public hearing and possible adoption of Resolution 2026-09. So I will make a motion that the town council hereby opens a public hearing on Resolution 2026-09, authorizing the acceptance and expenditure of a lead service line inventory grant in the amount of up to $60,000 from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services for the LSLI Field Investigation Project, and authorizing the administrator to sign and submit grant paperwork on behalf of the town of Durham.
Second.
Second. Any discussion on that? Take a vote. Council Register?
Curtis Register, aye.
Cardin Welsh, aye.
Jim Lawson, aye.
Mike Lerman, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
M. Friedrichs, aye.
Jay Gou's aye.
Heather Grant, aye.
Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak? The public hearing is now open. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak on this matter? Hearing none, I will make a motion that the town council does hereby close the public hearing on Resolution 2026-09, authorizing the acceptance and expenditure of a lead service line inventory grant in the amount of up to $60,000 from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services for the LSLI investigation project, and authorizing the administrator to sign and submit grant paperwork on behalf of the town of Durham.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion
I have a couple of questions.
on closing the public hearing?
Sorry, no, for a vote, we could.
Okay,
we
we'll
can
go
close
ahead
the
and vote
public
then.
hearing.
Go ahead and vote on closing the public hearing?
M. Friedrichs, aye.
Jay Gou's aye.
Heather Grant, aye.
Curtis Register, aye.
Cardin Welsh, aye.
Jim Lawson, aye.
Mike Lerman, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye. And now I'll make a motion to which you can respond, of course. I move that the Durham Town Council does hereby adopt Resolution 2026-09, authorizing the acceptance and expenditure of a lead service line inventory grant in the amount of up to $60,000 from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services for the LSLI Field Investigation Project, and authorizing the administrator to sign and submit grant paperwork on behalf of the town of Durham. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Councilor Friedrich?
So do we still have Rick on?
No.
Yes, Rich is with us.
Rich
He is?
Thank you.
Yeah, he'll be here.
I'm still here.
Okay, hi, Rich.
Hi.
So I guess one question I had is were there any matching fund requirements for this grant? I didn't see mention of anything.
On this one, no, this is a straight out grant.
Okay. And then I know that there was a postcard that went out in the past about this and asked folks to, I think it was just either submit a photograph or gave some instructions for kind of looking at your line and trying to figure out. Could you kind of provide some benefit to the public and explain the difference perhaps between that project and this one, or how they complement each other, or that what kind of the relationship may be for people who are wondering, didn't we already just do this, or what the
Right.
results of that have
So-
been?
I'll back up for a second just to kind of advise people of what this really is. So this is an EPA regulatory driven requirement along with the DES. We're a non-delegated state, meaning that EPA pretty much takes the lead on these types of things. It actually takes what is an existing rule, which is the lead and copper rule, and it expands it into the lead service line inventory, LSLI. So what the first step was to identify as best we could what we had for lead service line. So it's either lead service line, it's something other than lead like galvanized requiring replacement, or it's copper or unknown. There could be others, but those are the most common ones. In order to identify what we had out there, we worked with a consulting firm, Underwood Engineers, and it was through a initiative through the DES that they partnered communities with one of 4 different consulting firms, and we worked with Underwood since we've used them in the past, and they helped us do a record search of what we had out there for what we could eliminate from based on records and as-built that was not lead and was not galvanized requiring replacement. Part of that initiative was the postcard that you referred to that was sent out to give people an opportunity, if they were able to, identify what they had through a number of different ways. We then got all that information, compiled it using our GIS platform, and we were then able to say, all right, here's what we have that we could clearly take off the list. It's not galvanized requiring replacement, and it's not lead, but we have many unknowns. Off the top of my head, I think it was about somewhere between 500 and 800 unknowns. So those unknowns now need to be identified, because this all culminates with a replacement program requiring municipalities to replace these service lines. And not only is it the service line from the curb stop to the meter, but it's the service line between the curb stop and the main. There could also be grant monies available for that replacement, and that's yet to be determined when we go through this multi-year process. And when I say multi-year, it's a 10-year process. So we're in the phase right now where this grant of $60,000 allows us to do what we call potholing. So basically hiring a firm to dig down to the service line on both sides of that curb stop to then be able to identify, is this lead, is it galvanized, or is it copper or plastic, and eliminate that or include that. So that's kind of where we're at with this $60,000 grant, and it allows us to do not all of the potholing that we would need to do, but it allows us to get started and start making some progress in this, like I say, multi-year project.
Well, I can tell you, I wish you had sent that postcard out 2 years ago, because I replaced my entire driveway, and then I got that postcard, and my 70-year-old galvanized steel has resulted in a nice big patch in my new driveway. We now have plastic.
Yeah, the program, sorry, Counselor, the program only came about recently. So we're trying to, among juggling 1,000 other items, this is one that we're meeting the requirements of the regulation and the timeline that was established by the EPA.
Councilor Goose blames you directly.
I apologize.
Are there any other comments? Okay, take a vote. Councilor Ford?
Darrell Ford, aye.
Mike Clearman, aye.
Jim Lawson, aye.
Cardin Welsh, aye.
Curtis Racer, aye.
Heather Grant, aye.
Jay Goose, aye.
M. Friedrichs, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
All right. So we now have our roundtable. Would anybody like to go first?
I can start.
Okay.
Okay, the planning board met on the 24th, June. We had a public hearing on 7th, a request for a subdivision at 73 Piscataqua. It was a preliminary design review, so they're looking at taking a property that is currently a one property acreage and adding 2 more properties to that, so subdividing that. And they'll come back to us with their final designs, just based on the comments that came out of the preliminary design review. So they'll be doing test pits and other things based on communications back and forth. We had a public hearing on the architectural regulations. There were some minor changes that were made, and I think Michael Barrett's now finalizing the document and cleaning it up. And there, again, there was a significant amount of changes, I think, in like one of our second or third reviews, but on this final one, there were just some minor tweaks. So-
Can I ask about that one specifically while you're talking about it? Is the planning board close to then saying that they approve the architectural regulations?
Yes,
Which would allow the fifth story then to move forward
Yes.
once that's in place?
correct.
Okay.
And then we did the review of the amendment for accessory dwelling units, and we scheduled a public hearing for that on July 8th. I think the biggest struggle on that, if you remember, the amendment is to require that either the primary home or the ADU be occupied by the owner of the property. And I think that the biggest challenge for that was really in how do you manage the exceptions and how do you control that it's being complied with. So we hope that we've balanced that in a good way, and we'll see how the feedback comes on July 8th.
Can I ask a question about that one too? The homeowner requirement to occupy, have they decided what occupancy is? How much occupancy?
Well, I think, I think that was part of it as well. It also has like, there's a pause for sabbaticals and other items where, you would not necessarily be in your house for that period of time. I'm trying to remember the specifics of, well, I don't think you could rent, okay, now I'm going to be asking for Mike's help, because I didn't review it before this meeting to actually come into line with it.
So if I think I understand your question, it was what's definitions of the homeowner? So there were,
For a month, a year?
right, so it was 3 out of 5. 3 out of 5 years to be occupied, but there was also a reasonably broad definition of the owner, so it could be the owner's son, daughter. There was 3 or 4 things that were relatives that could be occupied in place of the actual owner.
But I think
Immediate
you also
family
have, I mean, just also though as a rule, if you occupy the home, it has to be, half the year plus 1 day in order to be considered, a resident of that home.
That's typically would be
Yeah.
the way.
But you also have the, again, exception of the sabbatical or some other event, a military assignment, all those other areas that would then be, provided exceptions.
We had with the short-term rental,
Right.
there's a ownership requirement, and so you could look at that. It's been a while since I looked at it, but we did have issues with like the sabbatical question. But I think it's worked very well, so.
Yeah, my memory serves me correctly. I believe that the ownership definition actually cites another provision in one of our town documents, I believe.
I'll have to look at, yeah.
Right.
Okay,
And that was it?
thank you. Do you have any, is that?
Nope, that's it. That was
Okay.
it, yeah.
Councilor Lewis?
The Agricultural Committee did not meet, but they're meeting this next Monday, and I will be there. Yes, that's it.
Okay. I ran into the farmer's market, so that's ongoing through the summer. Mondays, 2:30 to 6 p.m. We are out of our stock of yellow outdoor light bulbs that were free from the town, and so we may be going back to the AgCom, Concom, to see if there's a desire to continue that project, because we did get more requests than we were able to fill from residents for those. And there is a discussion on lighting regulations this Wednesday at the planning board, so people who have interest in that. There was some misunderstanding out there, so any changes to the ordinance about lighting would not require you to retroactively change existing lighting. So whatever lighting you have currently, you would not have to replace the bulb, replace the lighting feature. It only applies moving forward. So it would apply to new lighting. So I think there's been some misunderstanding out there about that in the community.
New lighting or burned out bulbs?
New lighting, because you would not have to replace a burned out bulb with new lighting.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
That's
the
kind of
cemetery.
weak, isn't it?
What?
Isn't that kind of weak?
It'll,
It mainly will come into play with site plans review. Maybe, I don't know, Heather, do you want to?
I would just say, maybe people will find it inspiring. I don't know what else to say. But I think it's pretty difficult to require a single-family home owner. All of a sudden, an ordinance comes out and they have to, modify outdoor lighting.
No, I just
'Cause it
wonder
could be
if, like,
costly.
replacement of bulbs, outdoor bulbs with yellow.
But we're talking
seems
about,
pretty
but even
straightforward.
more than that, downlighting, getting rid of, the floodlights that may be impeding
Okay.
into the wildlife areas. Those are areas that I think, are obviously part of the ordinance in terms of being aware of what light does and how it impacts the surroundings.
Okay,
That's,
thanks.
The cemetery committee also met, and we are getting some quotes on rebuilding the beautiful rock wall in front of it, and to also look at creating some more cremation areas for the cemetery, because that's been the highest demand. That would all come from within the cemetery's designated fund, so it would not overflow into the town budget at all. And then I ran into two of our reps, and Representative Selig wanted to put out a reminder that if there are any legislative requests, whether from the town council to think about, it could be ordinances that are on the books from 80 years ago, 100 years ago, that are kind of impede things. Or it could be another current concern, to be thinking about that and contacting our state reps now, because they're putting together that legislation now. And then Representative Howland wanted to point out that bills are being signed into law now by the governor, and perhaps, Todd, you may have some updates for us, but that may affect what we're looking at in terms of zoning over this summer. For example, the requirement that any commercial land, such as any downtown land, be by right be able to be multi-residential, could affect our ability to require even commercial space storefront on the first floor. And so whether we need to consider making that, perhaps there's a height bonus involved for including a commercial first floor, rather than having, so for example, rather than allowing 4 or 5 stories by right, making that something that is a bonus for having commercial on the first floor in order to really encourage that commercial first floor. So his point was to check on those and be mindful of those as we continue to thinking about zoning updates, particularly how we want to encourage vitality downtown and what we're considering doing there.
And just in the latest group of signings and vetoes, that bill and one other regarding public sector lobbying were not included yet. So we're still waiting to hear what happens.
Thank you. And then from the Durham Business
Wait,
Association.
before you move on, can
Yeah.
I back up one on the cemetery? Some years ago, I thought that there was money approved to fix the wall, and they never fixed it. What happened to that money? What happened to that project? And was that looked at all?
From what the conversations I understood, I don't know about decades ago.
No, not decades ago,
Yeah.
a couple of years ago.
There has been no scope of work done. There is an individual that Mr. Bevington has access to and a phone number for, but they never had anything contracted. And we didn't contract anything at the previous meeting either. It was simply a general affirmation of pushing ahead to get the scope of work. But this all money is coming from the cemetery fund. It will not touch budgeting or operating money, and it will not touch principal of the cemetery fund either. So.
Thank you.
From the Durham Business Association, a reminder that we do have continued free parking downtown for the month of July. And there is a dog scavenger hunt. So that is a scavenger hunt specifically designed for dog owners that will take place on July 5th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So that's a Saturday. And the town will be advertising this at Wagon Hill to let folks know.
July 5th?
July 25th.
25th.
Yep.
Sweet.
11 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Didn't miss it yet.
So should be a fun time for everyone. That's a Saturday. And of course, people from outside the community are welcome to both from within Durham and from surrounding towns to participate in that. There will be lots of fun prizes for pets and pet owners.
Counselors can't do it, can they? They aren't
Yeah.
eligible, are they? His dog is too smart.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
gonna find it all. Replace it with poop.
And then
That's pretty good, please.
I have heard sort of some concerns from residents. One, I guess that the town is following up with ordinances, and where there are violations, that the town is moving forward with enforcement and fining on top of that. And so I think this is kind of playing off of some construction that's been happening on Faculty Road, but also additionally with the noise ordinance and just different arenas of people feeling like if things are on the books, town staff is following up on those and making sure that owners are aware of the regulations, but those need to then be followed up with action if the owner is not cooperating with, our ordinances that are on the books. So I've heard some concerns from neighbors, both around the noise ordinance and making sure that if there are repeated violations, that there are fines following up with that. And also other kind of more zoning-based ordinances. Yeah, so I wanted to share those concerns. I think that that's important, of course, for our happy coexistence. And as Durham hopefully gets denser, those will be important to our continued happy coexistence. So that's it for now.
Do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Let's see. We've had a large number of queries regarding the recycling bin and trash bin distribution process, and Public Works has been dealing with those very expeditiously. One issue that's come to me is whether Sophie Lane, which is a private road and an association, should be issued a recycling bin for every house or two for the association, which is what our ordinance says. So this is a topic that dates back to around 2010 when Sophie Lane came to the planning board, and there was a change to the site plan to allow for recycling services at that property or those properties. And so I've got to spend some time to look into what happened in 2010 and if that has any bearing on what the ordinance now says, which, if you remember, we updated about a year and a half ago. I think Chair Friedman will touch base on the topic that Roger Hayden raised, which has to do with parking. And in particular, just to be completely transparent, there's an interest in having some conversation around the Church Hill zoning district and whether parking should be allowed as a principal use there once again. Or I guess previously it could be a conditional use that was eliminated, and there's a question of whether that might be changed. And there's an interest on the part of the buyer of Hayden Sports in potentially purchasing the land behind the Red Tower to create parking there to service properties downtown. So to be continued, and Joe will have some more information about that. We've received a draft letter of intent from the Ryan Companies, and more specifically Quaker Lane Associates, who the Ryan Companies is working with, for the potential purchase and redevelopment of 66 Main Street, the town property downtown. And I distributed a copy of that draft letter from Ryan and Quaker Lane to the council, but I just want to note there is an awful lot of work yet to be done on that, and what we've received will in no way be the final product. So that's something that Chair Friedman and I will be working with the developer on over the coming weeks. And my hope is we'll be able to bring something to the council, potentially at our August meeting, maybe one of our September meetings. We'll see how that goes. But I just want to be transparent to the public that we're talking about it. In terms of the project the council approved earlier dealing with the Bennett Road culverts, I just want to note that during many of the flood events that were referenced in the council communication dating back to like 2006 and the Mother's Day flood, we had a very serious issue where Cold Springs Road and some of the adjacent properties along Bennett Road were completely inaccessible to us. And those residents were trapped there, and the only way in or out was via the railroad trestle, which was very unsafe. And so that was the nexus to a long history of applying for federal money and ultimately getting the congressionally earmarked funds to try to remedy that problem. So I just wanted to note that to you. And I actually thought about this project in respect to the council's budget goals, and I was weighing whether it was still worth it to try to move forward with the project, because although there's an 80% match from the federal government, there'll still be a 20% match locally, which is like $500,000. But I have to say, I believe it's well worth it for us to invest that money, because it was hugely problematic. Like, we could not reach those residents for days on end, and those residents couldn't get out to get medication and groceries and things like that.
What was the percentage match that is required?
I think it's 80-20. 80-20. So I don't want to lose those funds, you know. Next, I'm pleased to note we applied for and have been notified that we've received a Piscataqua Region Estuaries Partnership PREPA grant in the amount of $22,525 to read what it says: to engage the Durham, New Hampshire community in the process of reviewing, updating, and consolidating the town's Shoreland Protection Overlay District and Wetland Conservation Overlay District ordinances, and they've been selected for funding. So that's positive. And Dwight Trueblood has taken the lead on this, so he and a few of us will be meeting with the folks from PREP to talk about the grant and what the process will entail in a little more detail. But positive news for us. We also have an outstanding NHDS grant we've submitted for additional work to potentially look at creating an update to our capital improvement plan process to more specifically acknowledge and reference our hazard mitigation planning. So that's exciting too. So we'll see how we fare with that process. In terms of the budget process planning, we've submitted some initial guidance to the departments to get them started on developing the budget. And so when you look at your emails from today, I've sent a bunch of them to you, you'll see that guidance. And I want to thank M. Friedrichs as well for the Yale information that you sent along. I thought that was very interesting. So I spent some time thinking about it. And so thank you.
Oh, good.
Also, we have been working to go through a selection process to fill the position of business manager when Gail Jablonski retires this fall. Unfortunately, our first effort ended with our finalist withdrawing from the process. So we have re-advertised the position, and we'll have some more information in the weekly Friday updates this week, but that continues. The new soft deadline to apply is, I believe, July 27th, the end of this month. And then with the planning director selection process, we have a strong slate of candidates. I developed some essay questions, and we're asking the candidates we thought were viable, there are many of them, to complete the essay questions, to just sort of talk about, we want to see their writing, see how they think about Durham, see how they think about planning. A couple of the candidates withdrew because they didn't want to spend the time completing those questions, and that's great. We wish them well. And our hope is that we'll be able to bring some folks into Durham to meet with our selection committee, which I now need to spend some time finalizing either the last week in July or maybe the first week in August. So that's slowly moving forward.
If I'm of use, I'm happy to volunteer again.
Thank you. I'll note as well, today we received, I've notified the council today that our longtime Durham police chief and police devoted member, Rainey Kelly, has notified the town of his retirement as of September 1st. And so we really wish Rainey well. He's done a fabulous job here over a 39-year career. We're all really indebted to him.
How many years?
39, I believe, here. So it's really impressive. And I plan to bring forward Deputy Chief Jack Dalton's name for the advice and consent of the council at our August meeting. So just to let you know, John Lavoy, our current captain, will be promoted to Deputy Chief. Jack
Say it
is
so.
with us here. John is with us here. And then...
Is he up to it?
He is. He's outstanding. And then we will then conduct a selection process for the captain position, and our interested sergeants can apply. We have 5 sergeants. So that's all in process. Also, we've concluded the search for to replace our longtime labor attorney, Joe McKittrick, and Tom Clausen from Nashua has been selected and has started to work with us as we begin the process of negotiating a successor bargaining agreement with our police union, which runs through the end of this calendar year. Let me just see a few other things. And the last is an interesting picture. I'm going to, Gwyneth, I'm going to try to share a picture. Hold on just a moment that I thought you all might find interesting. Hopefully this works. Share.
Do you need the wireless PowerPoint?
No, I'm going to just click on the picture so hopefully people can see it. Could you pull it up on the screen? Here it is. So this is a drone picture of the impoundment behind the Mill Pond Dam. What you see here is the log wooden mattress that's been extended out from the Oyster River Park into what was the Mill Pond to the thread of the river. And to the left is the Mill Pond Dam. To the right is going upstream. And what you see is the construction boardwalk being created so the equipment can reach the area that needs to be addressed, and the beginning of moving these large sandbags into place. These are like 1-ton bags, they're huge, to 1.5 ton, to enable the dewatering of portions of the site. And so you can see here, in essence, what the Oyster River is looking like with very little rain during kind of drought conditions. But it's quite interesting. Rich Rain and I had an opportunity to walk out on that boardwalk, and the mud is very sticky and dense. And it's no doubt, when somebody walked out into that, they sunk and got trapped, because it's kind of like quicksand. But just to give you kind of a sense of what's happening out there. And the representative from the construction company, the foreman, indicated that within the next couple of weeks, they may begin to saw cut some of the dam itself. So the process is moving along, just to keep you updated. That's the last update. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. The Durham Parks and Rec had a presentation to the neighbors of the proposed rink renovations and the proposed renovations at Jackson's Landing. And must say it went extremely well. The neighbors were very nice. They were appreciative of being asked to look at it first. They had a couple of suggestions. I have to say were very supportive. They, I think they even like the idea actually that it might be enclosed for noise purposes. It's been a bit noisy over there. They had some issues about light. But again, they were like, we moved here, we knew it was here. It's been great for us having it, and it was good to get their feedback. I'm sure they're going to want it done in a good way. So the next step is really going to be probably presenting it to try to do some fundraising, to get that initial fundraising, to see if there's enough fundraising based on a plan and a design, and now we have the neighbors' input to see if this project can move forward. So that's the update on the rink. The committee also, the Parks and Rec committee also doing further work on their strategic plan in terms of outlining the needs and priorities of different projects going forward. And summer camps are in full swing as far as that goes. The Tri-Region Economic Development stakeholders adopted, had their, it was presented that the 5-year plan was adopted on June 19th for economic development, and There's a list of priority projects. Durham has 10 projects on that list that, should we go forward, would have the backing of the SRPCs, Stratford Region. Even though this is the tri-region, Stratford Region supports most of the work done there. They also presented some useful links. Hang on a second. They had a link. There's going to be a Northeast Space Technology Trade and Research Expo with UNH in October 28th and 29th, furthering what's being done on that advanced technology. They have a link for the New Hampshire Ice Cream Tour. Some of you may have heard about it. There's a tour you can take through New Hampshire of some great ice cream places along the way. This is from the New Hampshire Business and Economic Affairs Office. And they have a Made in New Hampshire initiative that includes logos, brand guidelines for people that want to use that kind of service, help on all that. And there was a presentation on Childcare Aware New Hampshire, and what we're doing in Durham was presented in terms of some initial information about the EDGE and some of the downtown zoning changes shared with others in the region. And lastly, I wanted to bring up Mr. Hayden came in here earlier and talked about parking, and in 2025 we changed our zoning laws, and it was a 74-page document update on the zoning law changes. And in that 74-page update, in the table of uses, parking, for instance, at Churchill went from conditional use to not allowed, and not allowed off-site parking as a primary use. So, and that was changed in the table of uses amongst many other changes in the zoning at that time. I was asked by the people, is there anything they could do to allow parking nearby, but not necessarily on their own site? And I'm considering bringing forth at our next meeting a discussion about whether we should perhaps allow parking off-site as a primary use or as a shared parking use, which is allowed under the New Hampshire state statutes for innovative parking solutions, but would enable not only Mr. Hayden's property, but other properties, and none of these have come to me, but for example, Libby's or Scorpio's or these other one-story buildings that don't really have parking but may want to do something more, could they park close by? So can we do something in the so-called downtown adjacent, say in the Churchill district or in the CBD 2 district, where Mill Plaza has what seemed to be a lot of excess spaces, that those spaces could actually be used for downtown businesses. And there are developers that want to come to Durham and build market rate housing for people that have jobs. The requirement is that Durham can't mandate any more than 1 per 1,000, but the market really wants to deliver 2 per 1,000, at least 2 people in a 2-person apartment, each wanting to get to work, each wanting a car. And can they park close by? And right now, we're saying they can't. And I don't believe the planning people, and I've talked to the chairman of the planning board and our town planner, nobody really wants to go back to conditional use where it's just up in the air whether you can do it or not, and people are spending a lot of money and taking a lot of time. But can it be done as by right, supporting the downtown retail and supporting the downtown redevelopment? So I'll just throw that out in the this round table to see if that has any interest.
So I was on the planning board when the parking lot was being considered for the Red Towers. Excuse me. And I found exactly what you're talking about is it took a tremendous amount of time. It was very controversial. The owner of the property, who's done a lot of work in Durham, had to spend a lot of money putting together a reasonable plan, and ultimately it didn't go through. And so I agree that it can't be conditional use. But if it's permitted use, it needs to be developed with a reasonable set of standards, both in terms of the density of the parking and the characteristics of the parking. And I think that's very, very doable. So I really support this. I would suggest that this be a council-initiated zoning amendment, including the standards. So it may take longer than August. So it can go to the planning board, and the planning board will look at what's put together, and they could say, yeah, this looks great, we recommend it, or more likely, they'd say, I would suggest you make the following changes. So rather than just say to the planning board, we want you to do this, give them something that they can work on substantively so that they're not starting at ground zero. And then it gives us a lot of options. The second point that I'm going to make is Mr. Hayden said, as an example, he needs 36 spaces. We have a small pallet of land downtown, and we can't take 36 spaces and say, for this project, hey, you can lease these from the town, okay? It's going to be very difficult for the town to do it, and, you could reasonably say that adding 40 spaces, if you went to a structured parking scenario, you really need to have a total of 80 spaces, 40 new spaces and the 40 that existed. And then you start talking about, $2.5, $3 million. So I really think the solution to this resides more with the private sector and not the public sector. So I think it's a very interesting idea.
Appreciate
So,
that.
I just think from a revenue perspective, it has been proven over and over again that the absolute worst use of land is as a parking lot. You get the least return on your dollar, and you do not want to put private parking lots in a downtown adjacent area, not flat lots. Structured parking may be a different story, but if we want to encourage walkability, if we want to encourage movement, we want to encourage people to enter areas, nobody wants to walk through or next to a parking lot. And the return,
Why do you think that?
because it's been proven over and over again when you look at
By
studies of
whom?
urban planners, that you get pedestrian traffic drops. People do not want to walk next to these or through these. And when you look at, this is big, I'll pull up the planning books, but the economic data of what you get per acre for your return on the value of that land, if you do a flat parking lot, it is the worst use possible of that land. And so,
Worst use for whom?
in terms of the revenue base for the town,
Have you been to Boston?
do they have flat parking lots all
Oh my
over
God,
the place?
everywhere.
Could I ask a question to narrow, because
Yeah.
I'm really interested in this. First off, it has a lot to do whether the value, whether the land is currently owned and whether the owner puts in the parking lot. Secondly, if you have standards, okay, you're trying to get, to prevent that unattractiveness from happening. But is it our responsibility as a town council to say, that use that you want on your land, that's not the best use, that's not the use that you make the most money, so we're going to tell you can't do it. But the thing is if you allow surface parking, and that gets things started, there's parking for Roger Hayden, parking for whoever, and you see growth in the downtown, then you start to have developers that go, you know what, service parking there, it just is not working. So I'm going to put in a small parking structure. So it can increment or change over time, but we're not talking like a parking lot, like is the Home Depot parking lot. You have standards, and you also have density standards, so that if you have an acre of land, you're not using the majority of the land for parking. There's a small set aside. So I think there's lots of nuances to this, and we should talk about it and go through ideas rather than saying, urban planning says we shouldn't do it.
Well, I was going to add to that discussion that I think there are some interesting uses when you talk about shared parking. We've seen that already with some businesses coming forward in Durham and suggesting them that themselves, and opening up parking spots that already exist so that they can be used, say, both by a business that operates at day and residents at night, like the M&T Bank. That parking lot is just unused on nights and weekends. I think that's a very interesting proposal, and the planning board, I think 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, we had decided or said that we were going to look at bringing forward some language on shared parking ordinance to enable that, and I don't think that ever was worked on or moved forward. And I think the town continuing to look at street parking is also a really interesting option. And a lot of our surrounding towns, including Newmarket, do allow a lot more on-street parking, and DPW has come up with some creative ways to deal with the plow situation as needed, as opposed to flat out banning it, and kind of making, we have our small stretch of on-street parking in Main Street, and it's really not allowed anywhere else in the town. And so if we're going to have a discussion around parking, I think we should also put on the table re-examining street parking and hearing from DPW on some creative solutions around the plowing question, such as allowing cars to relocate to certain lots in, as needed by weather, to complete those plow functions, as well as looking at a shared parking ordinance.
I don't want to cut people off, but my goal for bringing this up, and Councilor Chair Friedman's goal, was just to let the community know, and that this was a topic we thought was worth discussing at a future date. We didn't want anyone to be surprised. We wanted it to be completely open, but I'm not sure whether it makes sense to have a detailed conversation right now before we really have a proposal on the table.
And the other thing that's imminent is we did a tremendous amount of work collecting parking data. All of that parking data is in the computer. We've now written things to summarize it by time of day of the week, parking type, short-term, long-term, permit, and so we've got it all sort of together, and the next step is to finish writing a report that summarizes it, and I think that's going to help this conversation, because you need to start with what you have when you look at municipal parking. But again, I'll tell you that the inventory and the possibilities that we have aren't going to be providing 40 or 80 spots for a specific project. So I think it's going to be interesting to look at.
You can put this in the August agenda? For further discussion?
Possibly, yes.
What we could definitely have for the August agenda is, unless you want to do it right now, and I don't want to, but, I could at least present to the council, a summary with a lot of graphs in terms of how we are currently using the parking, where the stress points. I'm still absolutely mystified that the things that people complain most about, there's evidence that there's plenty of capacity. So it's kind of like dispelling it's like finding the realities and differentiating from the myths. So
do you think you'd be able to say something in August if we were to talk about this in August, at the August meeting?
Put together a 20-minute presentation.
That'd be great.
And I think the report will
That'd be a good place to start.
Right. And we might also talk about what sites would want parking as well. Councilor Ralston?
Yeah, it would be interesting for me if we have some sort of profile as to who bought the spots. You know, we just sold a whole bunch of parking spots. I mean, was it students? Was it business people? Was residents? I'd like to know who bought them. I'm just, depending on what we're going to get, are we going to get a, like Jim said, it depends on how you set it up, but if we're going to get big, flat, open spaces with 1,000 students parking there, I vote no. If we're going to get something nice that helps with new development, that sort of thing, I would tend to vote yes. But, so I think that some sort of profile as to who bought the spots would be interesting.
And Durham does have a history that I think they're proud of that with the university, they pushed the parking out of the downtown. And we
Right.
don't have a downtown full of open surface parking spaces. You have to park further away. But for people shopping downtown and living downtown, they still, and if you have to go to work, they can't take 20 minutes to go to another parking lot somewhere, or take a bus to the parking lot to get to their car to go to work. So we're trying to also be sensitive to people that want to live here full-time and not just be a student. Councilor Register?
Just because you solicited opinions on the topic. I'm unsupportive of conditional use. I am supportive of a conversation that tries to figure out how we can accommodate more people. However, I think we should rely heavily on the fact that we have 2 transportation hubs, whether it's the train station and it's a public transit system that's one of the most robust in New Hampshire that we have access to, in addition to the fact that we've invested heavily into walkability of our streets and sidewalks and stuff along those lines. Cars are not the main method of travel as much anymore as they used to be. There's a whole lot of variances of things that help people get from point A to point B, and I think we should lean into those concepts as opposed to just sticking with the age-old one person, one car.
But consider also that if your objective is market rate housing, okay, we are not Boston, we are not an urban hub, and the reality is that most of the people who are looking for market rate housing in the Seacoast are going to want to know where are they going to park their automobile.
Yeah, because, if you think about, even if if maybe you did get one that's a UNH employee and the spouse is going to commute to Rochester, I'm telling you, there's no way to get to Rochester in a decent amount of time if you're not commuting, because that was my commute. The same goes with Somersworth and most of the areas. I mean, you go to a manufacturing firm, you're going to be driving to it because there's just no way to get there without your car.
And we continue to see a scaling back of the Wildcat transit system. I mean, it's amazing how many routes have been dropped.
Well, yeah, because Newmarket actually has an office part, and you wouldn't be able to bus there now.
I mean, it's a chicken and egg question a little bit.
Well, we'll
But
talk more
I'm
about
just a
this
full-time commuter,
we'll talk
so
more
it's-
about this then at the August meeting, for sure. Councilor
Thanks
Ford?
for bringing it up. Well, I was going to talk about the cemetery committee, but Councilor Friedrichs usurped that, and I was going to talk about
But she did a good job
I
of
was
it.
going to talk about the prep. And Todd did that, so.
Sounds like you're out of a job.
I will tell you,
What's left?
that at the Conservation Commission meeting, Dwight Trueblood was re-elected as chair, and Neil Slepian was re-elected as vice chair. And the WSOD subcommittee continues to slog through rewriting the WSOD.
Will there be, before you go on, will there be this prep grant that they're talking about? Will you have to rework or redo everything you've done and just now
No.
start over?
No, this is, the prep grant is for helping to engage and include the public in that discussion. But we got to have something to start from.
So
and
your
this is what-
committee will make the first recommendation?
Right.
And then they'll help get feedback, is that it?
Yeah. Pretty much.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll only just follow up just on that one little item and just sort of reiterate what I had said at a previous meeting, since now that you have the grant, is that I hope that the Conservation Committee will utilize that grant for the purpose of public engagement and not necessarily for a specific selling point.
That's what it's for.
Yeah, not public relations, but rather engagement. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
The Energy Committee meets tomorrow night, so there is one item that I wanted to just briefly talk about and get input from the council, and it's regarding electric rates. In the current rate period that ends this month, energy costs from Eversource were about 30% less than CPC&H. Eversource was at 11.3 cents a kilowatt hour, and CPC&H was at 14.6 cents. So I really thought at this time I might be asking the council, should we be having a discussion about CPC&H, the cost to the community or our residents, and the value of it. But in the upcoming rate period, Eversource rates will increase 24% to 14 cents, and CPC&H rates will increase 2% to 14.9%. So there's a 6.7% difference there, about 1 cent.
What, can you say those again? Eversource is predicting 14?
Their filing has been approved. This goes up 23.9% to 14 cents. And CPC&H goes up 2% to 14.9 cents. So they've closed the gap. Also, what was interesting is that Eversource has $38 million of under-collected supply fees. In other words, the rates were so low, as I understand it, they need to collect more in the future to cover the difference. So I also note that CPC&H rates were between May 2023 and February 2025, they were lower, sometimes much lower than Eversource or equal to Eversource. So I'm going to suggest that the council wait until the new year and the next rate cycle, which will start in February of 2027, before we possibly consider a discussion about has CPC&H worked well, and is it working well for our residents? Because honestly, I was a little bit surprised, because it's not my area of expertise, but also very pleased that the gap has closed so significantly, and CPC&H rates only went up to 2%. So I'm not planning to bring up this discussion in the early fall as I've been anticipating, but wait until next year, unless somebody says they would prefer to do it sooner rather than later.
Good idea.
Yes, the Historic District Commission meeting scheduled for the 2nd of July was canceled. So we didn't have anything significant to discuss.
IMAC met 17 June. We discussed a myriad of things, but most importantly for Durham Day and New Day, we're looking to have a booth out there to discuss reusable bags versus plastics. Next meeting is 15 July. Land Stewardship Subcommittee met 10 June. Next meeting is 8 July. Nothing significant to report. Town and Gowns next meeting is 15 July. Stratford Regional's next meeting is 17 July. School Board's next meeting is 22 July. We do have a new interim superintendent, Suzanne Filippioni, and a new Oyster River High School principal interim, Kristen Perrin. 26 June, Councilor Ford and myself attended the Seacoast Economics and Development Workshop hosted by the Workforce Housing Coalition of Greater Seacoast and New Hampshire Housing. In it, they talked about the greater inhibitions of creating economic return on development. And some of the key takeaways I took from that meeting were contrary implications of zoning, i.e. we're zoning for things we don't actually want. Lot size requirements are too constrictive, ratio of impervious is too high, and the green space requirements are ineffectual at creating community spaces. Those are the 4 takeaways I had. I am going to mention the cemetery committee just as a side along. I think Chair Bevington did a good job. He was very in control of the meeting. It was very easy to understand what was going on and open to questions as we hadn't met in a couple years. And they also, to clarify the time we're gaining with the additional sections that they're adding for the graveyard, he expects that to last another 10 years. So it's not like a short-term fix. It should be a decent longevity. Finally, I wanted to end on a positive note. A couple months ago, we unanimously, September 8, 2025, approved a sign-on for an amicus brief in support of the 14th Amendment. And on 31 March, the motivated administrator signed onto it and let us know that he was going to hold us personally responsible for anything that happens to him. And then 30 June, the Supreme Court in a 6-3 decision ruled in the Trump v. Barber case that the 14th Amendment is indeed an amendment of the Constitution. And one quote from Chief Justice John Roberts that I wanted to quickly read was, "Citizenship then and now was the right to have rights, to freely participate in our political community. The framers of the 14th Amendment extended that promise to every free-born person in this land. We keep that promise today." And so I'm very proud that we signed on for it. I am proud that Durham continues to take care of its residents, its neighbors, and is willing to look beyond its borders to see things that will indirectly or directly impact our lives. That's all I have.
Can I make a last comment? Just thinking about, as I've walked downtown, which I do a lot, this Carden, I think also, we do notice immediately, boy, this place is quiet. There's nobody around. And when I go into the Mayway restaurant, I ask Lynn, the owner, how you doing? She said, it's quiet. There's nobody around. The Thai restaurant, same thing. I really hope that if we can build something downtown that will be for people who want to work in the area. We do have a railroad that goes into Boston. We have the potential to do it. I just hope we do, because I would love to see something going downtown more than we have right now. I don't agree with Mr. Hayden that it's nobody's fault that Stuart Shane's, since I've been here over 50 years, I remember that clothing store. Let's face it, folks, the malls come in, it's not going to support the clothing store.
The mall is being demolished as we speak.
The mall is being demolished, and they're putting housing in different places. But everything we think about here, we should be thinking about what can we do to get the right people for us. One of the problems that we've done in terms of so quiet, and I think it was very necessary when we did it, was the large buildings for students. They clear out in the summer. It's very busy, obviously, during the school year, and then they clear out. So we've got to figure out how to put buildings up that, other than students, to support our downtown will go in. So everybody has to think about that. The planning board, zoning board, everybody. And
But we also have to remember that we only have 6,000 residents.
right,
And we have 23 licensed eating establishments. And if you do a market study, you would conclude that a town like Durham, with just its permanent residents, could support about 1.5 restaurants. Okay? Barrington is bigger than Durham. Okay? How many restaurants do they have? And so I think that what we're dealing with is the characteristics of being a small university town. And changing that is going to take in my opinion, some very creative, insightful business people who do things in downtown Durham to make it a destination. But adding a couple thousand residents so that we're as big as Barrington, I don't think is going to change the summer.
Well, I think that's what I'm saying, Jim, is that we've got to
But
give a
that's-
lot of thought to what we're putting down there to figure out what
But we
can bring people
can't tell
here.
people what they do or what business they can have, you know, you know,
Yeah, it's like, I guess like Meredith, New Hampshire is an example. You know, 40 years ago, it was really quiet. And then Alex Ray, the Common Man, and Rusty McLean came in and they started to invest with a vision, and it's hopping now. There's a lot going on.
it's
But
all,
you need that.
and it's that way in the winter too.
Yeah.
Because it's a, you know, destination. I mean, look at Tuckaway Tavern, you know, in Raymond.
I'm not asking for an answer now, I'm just
Yeah.
bringing it out, that that's what we got to be thinking about.
Okay. I had one other roundtable item I just thought I'd update on. So this is just an evolving issue, and I had updated the council maybe a year ago on this. Underneath the railroad trestle at the railroad depot, Durham owns the trestle, there are old blast plates that are on the roof, which were intended to protect the trestle from the old steam trains that came through. And these blast plates are iron and they're bolted in. And about a year ago, we noted that some pieces of the blast plates had broken off and fallen on the platform. So we hired, I think BHB to come in and do a study, and we're just getting the results of that. But Public Works was down there recently, and they found some more pieces of blast plates, not over the platform, but over sort of the tracks that were covered by, you know, dirt and stuff. So Public Works is increasingly concerned about safety on the platform, and we've reached out to UNH to have a meeting about this issue and how we might address it. So just, it's an evolving issue. We don't believe that there's a imminent threat at the platform itself, but we are concerned. And these iron plates are thick. They're probably an inch thick, and they're incredibly heavy. Rich brought in a piece this big, and if that fell and hit somebody, it'd be a problem. It's not that the whole plate is falling, but there's deterioration around the edges of these big
The
plates.
lifespan of what was created has been
That's right.
exceeded.
The
And you
plates,
don't want it to fall into track into one
right, the
place.
plates themselves are like
It is
pieces of this
pretty
table, you know, but the edges are starting to have problems. So we're just, in an abundance of caution, we're taking some steps to think about it.
Okay.
All right. Oh, I see Officer Captain Lavoy here, and
Well, almost deputy chief.
almost Deputy Chief. Would you like to come up and present about what you have in mind, the work that you've done, what is proposed?
So just as Captain Lavoy comes up, I just want to note that, you know, we have ideas and they can take some time to come to fruition. So last fall, we had some conversation about parking at Wagon Hill Farm and whether or not the town should consider charging non-residents to park there. This has come up at least 2 other times over the last 25 years, and the council has expressed a concern about changing the status quo. They didn't want to charge for out-of-town people. I indicated that I would bring the council a proposal, so we've been spending some time trying to develop a proposal, and we did approach the Land Stewardship Subcommittee to get their feedback. And for a variety of reasons, which I've conveyed to you in one way or another over the last probably 4 months, they recommended against moving forward with any type of charged parking. But I did ask John Lavoy at the DPD to try to think through an approach. And so that's what we're bringing you tonight, is an idea that we think would be viable. But the question is, do you like it? Do you want to move forward with it? Would you like to alter it? So anything's on the table, but we're trying to create opportunity. So with that, if John could sort of explain what we've brought forward.
Sure. So we did look at, or we did think about multiple different options up there. And the reality was that what we have presented for ordinance language and in your communication was the most realistic and least expensive way forward. There are currently no real regulations on parking up at Wagon Hill other than handicap parking, some fire lane area that's basically in the upper circle. And other than that, there really are no regulations. So this would establish metered parking regulations for that area. And the idea that we have is that we already have an agreement with Park Mobile, which we use in the downtown for application-based parking, meaning you can use your phone to do it. If you notice any of the green signs in the downtown, if you don't have a phone that's capable of doing that, you can call an 800 number and you give them your credit card over the phone. So there are some alternatives to not having a smart device in your hand to be able to park in a place, but we would easily be able to add a new zone in the Wagon Hill area, the dirt lots that are up there currently. We would place some new signage, which Park Mobile provides to us for free, and we would be online and in business. We've talked significantly about what we would charge for that, what would the time limits be. In this proposal, there is no maximum time limit, so you could potentially start up there as soon as the sun comes up in the morning and park until nighttime, and as long as you were paying all that time, you would not be in violation. We did change it a little bit in that we have many different layers to parking in the downtown, but one of the things we thought about at Wagon Hill is that it really is a place that we think most people go for relatively short durations of time, 30 minutes, maybe an hour. They're out for a walk, they're taking their dogs, enjoying the area, but we, instead of doing things like our 2-hour limits in the downtown, we moved it to half-hour increments that you would be able to pay for, for those areas up at Wagon Hill. And the rate would be $1 per 30 minutes, again, using the Park Mobile application to pay for the parking. And that we would also make exemptions to essentially Oyster River communities. So if you are a resident of Darnley or Madbury and you have one of, we call them our resident stickers, the ones that we get here at Town Hall or at the DPW for the dump stickers, and you can use downtown for free parking timing, or the hour or 2 hours of free parking downtown, those would be exempt and you would not need to pay. So our parking enforcement officers would be easily able to spot those cars out, whether they're from Lee, Madbury, or here, and they would not need to pay. If it was an outside of those community vehicle that was parking up there, then this ordinance would apply to them and they would need to pay for their time limits. We did discuss and think about some of the other nuances of there. We know that we have the community gardens and there's likely to be more and more functions with the renovations that have occurred at the house up there, so we easily could implement essentially an exemption permit where we could issue those out to the people that we've identified would need those, and if they did not possess one of those resident stickers, this would make them exempt from having to pay for that parking too. The difficulty I have with all of this is giving you any type of opinion on what type of revenue we would gain from this, and I just don't know. We've talked a lot. We've tried to run some analysis on what really is limited data that Todd was able to get through some collection that happened a few years ago. So it's not great. That's bad news, but it's the reality of it, and we really don't know. It's a total guess as to what this would bring in for revenue, and I guess from a practical standpoint, I say to you, with that, the investment is essentially zero to get us there, and it's mostly your feedback on whether you think this is a good idea or not.
And I'll note, when we talked about this in the past, we didn't have the Park Mobile technology. So
Right.
we were looking at really 2 pay and display kiosks, which were like $12,000 a piece. So the cost has changed substantially.
Yes.
John, there's something. Personnel to enforce it. Summer is a huge time for people going out there. As far as I can tell, most of our part-time enforcement people have disappeared. They've gone home for the summer. So personnel-wise, how would you expect us to handle enforcement? And even during the year, do we have enough part-time people checking parking to be able to handle something like this? How often would they be going around?
It is true that we hire seasonal employees for our parking enforcement. So we focus that purely on academic year for UNH. And historically, our part-time personnel for that have been students. So yes, it is true, they do leave us most times in the summer. And we do that as a cost savings measure to not have them be working when really the parking the demand on parking lessens during that time. We still have a part-time person who is splitting their time between our evidence room and parking enforcement, which is a very unique position. But we're confident that he would still be, I mean, he's still patrolling Wagon Hill now. He gets out, maybe you've seen him walking through there looking for unleashed dogs and addressing any parking issues that are up there throughout the day. So I don't anticipate that that's a significant issue. I do think there would be some challenges on some of the weekend times, holidays, things of that nature. But that's, our officers, our patrol officers are also equipped to write and issue parking tickets and address issues as well. So it would be a balancing act, and there would be some things we would need to consider about that. But I think that we would be relatively okay on our enforcement of it.
So my first question would be to better understand, with the goal of doing this paid parking at Wagon Hill, is it to generate revenue for the town, or is it to kind of flatten the curve of the parking situation because sometimes it's overflowing and people are on Route 4? Because I think that kind of sends us different directions in terms of how to implement this.
I think both of those are reasonable thoughts of the project. So I know that when we were at the Conservation Commission and talking to them about it, there was some discussion. My opinion was that there was almost a conflict of Wagon Hill is open, we want as many people up there. And then in the next breath it was, we're being overrun with dogs and people at certain times. And how do we balance all of that? So I do believe that this addresses both of those at the same time, in that it definitely would generate revenue for the town, but I can't tell you how much. And I do think it would likely affect the use of that property. I do think that some people would be turned away from that and would say, I don't wish to pay, and they may not go there. And I do think that having some regulation to it, especially during those high demand times that you're referencing, when we do have overflow parking, it may assist in that. But I also think that would be something we'd have to watch and see. I don't know how much of an impact it would have on it.
So I guess then my follow-up question about that would be whether we might consider offering seasonal, like a season's pass, for some of the uses you mentioned, such as the community gardens. And also, I do think maybe then limiting it to Durham residents as opposed to Oyster River. Why should we be discriminating against Dover by just including our school district when it really is a Durham property? And then maybe we can offer certain times of the day or certain times of the week when it's free. I mean, if it really is about demand, could we just have enforced paid parking for non-Durham residents during the peak periods of use? And then that would kind of shift some of the use towards those off-peak periods and still be free and accessible to people at that time. So that would be my feedback about what you put together.
Thank you.
I think from a public policy perspective, the goal would be both of those things, revenue generation and sort of smoothing the curve. And, we've talked about how we can bring in more revenue at Wagon Hill Farm. And aside from the apartment, I believe that charging for parking is the next best thing. So, in terms of Lee and Madbury usage, that's something the council needs to talk about and decide. We've heard over the months there's a concern about a Lee family going to the property with a gaggle of Durham kids, and would it be fair to that parent to have to pay for the parking when they've got a car full of people from Durham, perhaps? And so we're trying to come up with some equitable response, but we're not tied to that. We're just trying to bring you solutions.
And that's a good point. We paid for that place I remember very well we paid for that place.
And we continue to pay for it.
So Sorry.
To the point of the other towns, I heard that debate. I'm quite comfortable with the idea of Lee and Madbury. I mean, we were actually thinking in terms of long-term, trying to encourage relationships between the abutting towns and for other possible joint ventures. It's a goodwill gesture. We're not doing this to make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. It might pick up some petty cash, it might pick up a few $1,000s a year. It might at some point help keep the improvements at the farm going with helping other people fund it, which I think is totally reasonable. I don't think we owe Dover residents anything, quite honestly. So I think that the concept is a good one. And as long as from a police point of view, it's not going to be an additional burden in terms of enforcement, because one of the questions I was going to ask was, from an enforcement point of view, just to have enough enforcement that people don't just think it's a joke a few times a week to take a stroll through or ticket?
Yes, and our parking enforcement is on Monday through Friday, and then in the academic year, that's when we shift to moving them onto Saturdays and other times throughout the week in the evenings, later into the night. So that's a variable that we can move around and to do that, and we obviously think about that too. If we have rules but don't enforce it, that's not going to last. So. That would take some work to do, but I'm confident that we could handle that, and that the enforcement piece of it would be enough to deter people from not following the regulations.
Okay. Good. Yeah, I think it's a worthwhile venture. I mean, there's plenty of other towns and parks that charge parking fees. I don't think it's an unreasonable ask, and I also don't think that for $1.50 an hour or $2 an hour, anybody that goes there and then stops at Emery Farm afterwards to get a cup of coffee and pays $5 or $6, I don't think the parking is going to be a disincentive. So I don't think anybody's going to be ruled out from participating because of that.
With the park, so I'm fine to go to first reading. I'm not sure in the end I'm going to support this, but I'll, one way or the other, I'll come up with some concise reasons. I visit parks and municipal parks in the area. I'm not aware of any park that I have to pay for parking. In Dover or Stratham Hill.
The Stratham Parks was free last time I went.
Hampton Beach.
Hampton Beach, Prescott Park.
Well, that's a beach.
Yeah, so
That was a controversial thing when it happened, but it happened.
Newcastle.
Yeah, but this doesn't have to be, I mean, if I go up to Garrison Park, if I go down to Stratham Hill, if I go to any of the parks in Newmarket, I'm not charged for parking. So is a person that would have gone to Wagon Hill but decides not to, no longer stopping by Emery Farms and buying that $6 coffee? Is that a possibility? How does it impact them? I mean, we pay for Wagon Hill and all the costs. People in Lee and Madbury don't, but I understand Todd's point, and I don't want quid pro quo where suddenly if I go up to Powder Major Park, I have to, start paying for that because Madbury says, well, if Durham's going to do that, then we're going to do it. And so I just, we can go to the public hearing, but I think you can manage parking behavior by parking rules and fees and things like that. I don't think you can manage the behavior of using a public asset by implementing a parking program. And so between the resources, what we get out of this, potentially the bad publicity like Rise had recently, I'm interested in the public hearing, but I just am skeptical of whether there's going to be benefit to us.
Anybody else want to say something?
So go for it. We'll do it in line.
Yeah, first of all, thanks. Good job, John, as usual. I think you're way too high with the 80% non-Durham residents going there, but that's just like a gut reaction to your numbers. I was part of the group that voted no at the Land Stewardship Committee, and I'm still kind of on the fence about it. And I wonder if we might consider just like doing a test run. So, it depends on what the public says, but we might say, okay, let's try it over this period of time, then look at it again, because there's a lot of, I think there's negatives and positives. I appreciate Mike's comment about, if we're trying to do more with Madbury and Lee, it makes sense to include them. The fact that they're using one of our financial analysts, I think is a good first step to potentially other things. But I agree with Jim that charging for what was previously a public space, and it's kind of like, in some ways, the continued, I don't know, I don't know how to say it, but just all of a sudden, everything is about dollars and cents. And things that used to be free aren't anymore, and people are going to charge as much as they can for whatever they can. And it just seems wrong somehow for Durham to be doing this. But I'm happy to do a test run and see.
I'll vote for that part. But I think to do it and then evaluate it. It's not going to cost us anything to really do it.
Well, if we
Install the
renegotiate the
signs.
park mobile installations, that might change the cost.
But don't call it a test run, just understand that if you do it and it doesn't work out well, it's just very easy to go ahead and terminate
Right.
it. I will say that, to the extent that I do follow social media, we put in permanent parking spaces up by the middle school, okay? To do exactly what Roger Hayden was, talking about. But the reaction to that on social media and what people were saying about the town and things, I just think if that was the reaction to something up at the middle school, which I think the police did and parking enforcement did an incredible job trying to educate people, not going in there writing lots of tickets and things like that. I think that what we're going to see at Wagon Hill is going to be much more significant than that. And I think that I think Durham's going to get a lot of negative feedback and publicity.
Councilor Register?
Again, thank you for the work on this. I had a couple of questions. So there is no overnight camping or anything like that, or permits for that for folks to go. Okay. And tenant parking, I didn't see how many spaces the tenants were going to get.
I think there are 2 up there right now.
Yeah.
So those are signed and they wouldn't be affected by this. That's kind of a separate issue where it's
Yeah, I
marked
think,
in part of the house property.
so just to go on the monologue here, I think it's a good idea. I'm very supportive of it. I think the goal should not be revenue generation, it should be turnover, because we get nasty grams every year about either dogs going crazy or out of town people letting their dogs off leash that are aggressive, or people parking in crazy ways. And I think this is an easy way to provide some legitimacy to the folks that frequent the area to see that it's not just an empty parking lot, it is a regulated zone that requires certain codes and conducts of behavior, not just doing whatever you want, and also would inspire quicker turnover. And I would be also supportive of it being Durham only, not including the Oyster River community, because maybe that would encourage carpooling. They're going to find ways to make it free. That's what people do. And they could shove all their kids into a Durham-owned van, or they can meet somewhere else and find a way. That's totally fine. And that limits the amount of friction we're having with people who are complaining about misuse of the property or overpopulation of the property. In addition to the fact that we spent around $1 million on the renovation of that house. that did not necessarily come out of anybody else's pocket. So I think there are ways, I don't know if 30 minutes is the right number. I think we don't want to set ourselves up for failure for frequency of checking on people. I think that enforcement having a different timing of day for peak hours, and we're not making it seem like it's just a money grab. We're using it as a way to help encourage turnover of vehicles, but not necessarily a way of sucking money out of people's pockets. But I am supportive of this endeavor and of its going to first reading.
I'll just say, in terms of the pricing, we really tried to price this very economically. We weren't trying to gouge people, so we thought the average person would be very willing to pay, $2 to go spend an hour walking around. And as Councilor Lehrman noted, they'll go across the street and spend way more than that on coffee or cocoa, I think, so.
Well, and if you decide that the pricing needs to go up or down, that's a decision that you can make. That doesn't come back to the council.
So does somebody want to make a motion to have a first reading on this?
Can I ask a question? Unless people have issues with the second two, is there any way that we can have one motion to move all of this to first reading, or is that make it too complex?
I would do it. The only comment I have about that, I really would have liked to seen a map on B and C, on what we're talking about on Technology Drive. So perhaps for the public, if we do schedule the public hearing, that as part of that communication, we could see a map for both of those. Does anybody else does anybody have any objection to doing all three at the same time, going to first reading?
No, I don't have any problem with that. But can I ask one more question about the Wagon Hill, and that is, I'm just thinking, does Dover allow their residents to park downtown without paying, or do you know?
They have
So everybody has to pay when they're there.
That's correct.
It's not the same as the public, if you think about it, yes, state, national parks, obviously they charge. Very few local parks charge, I have to say. And those local parks are owned by the towns and so forth, so I'm kind of caught on this.
That means it'll encourage folks to expand their knowledge of the local areas.
I'm not sure. I'd like to hear more, so I would certainly vote for the public, for the first reading. And I'd want to hear from the public too, if there'd be some, so.
All right. Then
All three are fine to me.
I'll go ahead and make the
I
motion.
have some questions about C, so if we're combining them, should we ask those questions now for B and C?
Sure.
So, I mean, I would just, I guess I'm wondering where the $300 annual parking pass fee comes from, because that seems
Really low.
very, very low, especially compared to what we're charging elsewhere in town. And I think when we look at some of our goals as a town in terms of, we're trying to support walkability, we're trying to support local businesses and people supporting local businesses. I do have concerns that such a low rate may encourage more people who don't currently have cars in Durham to bring their cars to Durham, when that is the exact opposite of a lot of our other goals. So I think if we're adding this striping, I would like to see a much, much higher rate to begin with. And then maybe, if there's good reasons why that seems to be unfair, we could look at lowering the rate, or if it would serve other public interests. But at this point in time, I feel like adding additional striped parking out there, it is more of a disservice to the stated current goals of the town than it is a service. And so if we're going to be adding it, the revenue should really be significant in order to balance out that kind of cost benefit.
As a comment, people park along that road now for free. So it's not necessarily stopping cars from being here by not having paid parking because people park in that area, because it also creates overflow parking for the housing out there. But $300 a year is, I'm not sure how that came across, because maybe every 6 months, even that's really generous, but I think it's way, way too low.
So I can comment on that. We did what I thought was a reasonable market study and that we looked at the pricing that we have downtown, which was built specifically on other locations that are selling in the downtown. In fact, one of the churches charges more than we do for downtown parking. But initially, we thought we might be in the $900 to $1,000 range for parking spots for this proposal on technology. However, we learned that UNH's parking that they're selling out at West Edge, I believe, is $250 a academic year. And the other complication that we have is that UNH is serving West Edge and their parking lots with their transportation system that they have. Obviously, we do not have one that we would be serving technology, and we would be riding on the coattails of UNH because they have a, I think they call it Campus Connector or something like that, as part of Wildcat Transit that goes from various locations of the downtown and on campus out to a bus stop near the cottages, and they're serving basically that population out there. That service is very limited. So I was under the belief that it was quite consistent and available much of the time. It is not. It's currently not running at all right now. On any breaks that UNH has, it shuts down. So that is if they have a one-day holiday, it's not running. If it's Christmas break, it's not running. On Saturdays, the service is very limited. I want to say it's 10 a.m. to like mid-afternoon or even very early evening. So we factored that into our pricing in that we knew we could not guarantee people who would purchase a permit from us out there that they would have, I use reliable in a context of just that it's not available all the time to them. And I hear a lot of comments from other folks who are utilizing parking, even in our downtown, about walking at night, safety-related concerns, and I think that all plays into that. I think if we were to set the price for Technology Drive at $1,000, which is where we started, I'm not confident that we would sell 10% of those spots based on what we look at in all of the area. As far as the goals of the council and the town, understanding all of that, we are consistently looking at social media and the demand of people to park their cars, primarily, yes, the students. And we are still seeing right now a high demand or people requesting to park in driveways, finding locations in Dover to park that they're paying for, and then they're using other public transportation or Uber rideshare options to come back into Durham. And it would appear to me, I guess even from a layperson's perspective, that we're missing an opportunity to grab those people who are still going to bring a car and are paying to park in other locations, but they're doing it privately or at another municipality. And with this proposal, we thought both about some of the overflow parking at the cottages, because you're absolutely right. There are no regulations other than winter parking ban, which is November through April, out there to prohibit cars. So we notice that when there are large, kind of like busy weekends at UNH, that road is, both sides of it are filled with people who are following, really, there are no rules except for don't park in front of the fire hydrants and don't block the lane of travel. And we do issue tickets and tow cars for that right now at night when those things happen. This would give an opportunity for people, if they don't have enough parking at the cottages, to utilize it. It would give opportunity for students who need a car but can't get into our spots downtown. 66 Main Street sold out in 9 minutes. Depot Road sold 90% of the spots in about 15 minutes, and the remaining, we learned, were they sold out immediately after UNH opened their lottery for their parking. So there is a significant demand for people to bring cars to here, and we're trying to capture as much of that for revenue generating purposes.
Do you know what those rates were that sold out that fast? Do you know what the rates were?
For ours?
Oh, you mentioned 3 different places.
Yes, so the 66 Main Street lot is $1,350 a year. We break it in half. We sell it in 6-month increments. And then Depot Road is $1,250. There's a few nuances there. If you're a Durham resident, there's a very reduced rate. There's summer permit parking and other things like that. But generally speaking, it is that. And we also do that in 6-month increments as well. So just in those two sales,
$100 a month.
yes.
They're about $100.
A little, yes, a little bit more, but it's those, that indicated to us that there's still enough to bring in, and we still get queries about where to park. We're handling those now. The front office staff are picking up the phone daily.
I can guarantee you that tomorrow when I'm there answering the phone, I'll get 2 or 3 calls from
And I will
desperate
say,
mothers. Where's my kid gonna park?
I will say, is the $300 the perfect number? I don't know. It's our best guesstimate at looking at the UNH parking rates that they have for parking facilities that are relatively close to technology. My comment to you would be, I do not think it is worth what it is to park downtown. The convenience of parking at 66 Main or Depot Road far outweighs having to go out to technology through whatever means that may be for transportation.
People bring the scooters in the back of the car and then they scoot out.
We see that. I do think that that would be a thing that people would consider and think was reasonable, and that concerns me as well, just in
Okay,
general.
they gotta get into town somehow.
When we first brought the Depot Road spaces online, we went after it for $1,000 a space, and that was just too high. And it went largely empty for the first year. And we heard about it from a certain resident for probably 10 years thereafter.
Maybe longer.
So we're just trying to be sensitive to this, even if we're a little low, if we fill it the first year, the news of it spreads and we can strengthen
It's
it.
fairly
year two.
inconsequential to the rollout.
But it seems to me the reality is that in this case, UNH is setting the market out in that area. And I think the best thing is to pay price based on the market, which UNH has set, and get a year under our belt, and
Raise it
as
if we have to.
the West Edge and
Are
the
we-
availability of parking changes out there, and, the market changes, then we can adjust the prices accordingly.
And it doesn't have to be a command decision, right? That's, or council decision, that's a administrative decision.
Right, once it's in place,
Yeah.
in
I mean,
real
that's
time,
why
we
it's
can
fairly
increase it if
inconsequential
it's
to the
going
rollout
well.
right
That's
now.
right. That's right.
But basically,
Okay.
what we're doing is we're selling spaces to students. I mean, no one else is really going to rent out there. And just other comments, so we're going to raise prices in town again this year, right? If we sold out in 6 minutes, it's clear that,
The demand is there.
Yeah, good.
We cannot do it right now. We've just sold
No,
those,
yeah.
but yes, for the next
Excellent.
iteration of them, there's
And
nothing.
I agree with that.
we just did raise the price on those spaces.
Yeah.
We did, yes.
We've increased them by about $100 a space.
Good.
So I'll go ahead and make a motion then that the Durham Town Council does hereby approve on first reading as presented as amended ordinance 2026-06, amending Chapter 153 Vehicles and Traffic, Section 153-29 Metered Parking Areas of the Durham Town Code to expand metered parking to Wagon Hill Farm, and sets the public hearing for August 3rd, 2026, and that the Durham Town Council does hereby approve on first reading as presented as amended ordinance 2026-07, amending Chapter 153 Vehicles and Traffic, Section 153-29 Metered Parking Areas of the Durham Town Code to expand metered parking to Technology Drive, and sets the public hearing for August 3rd, 2026. And further, that the Durham Town Council does hereby approve on first reading as presented as amended ordinance 2026-08, amending Chapter 153 Vehicles and Traffic, Section 153-49, Schedule 17, Parking Prohibited Certain Hours of the Durham Town Code to restrict certain parking and expand metered and permitted parking to Technology Drive, and sets the public hearing date for August 3rd, 2026.
Second.
Is there a second? Is there further discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote then. Counselor Friedrichs?
M. Friedrichs, aye.
Jay Hughes, aye.
Heather Grant, aye.
Kurt Schreister, aye.
Cardin Welsh, aye.
Jim Watson, aye.
Mike Lerman, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye. Thank you for your presentation today, and we'll look forward to next month.
Nice work, John.
Yes, indeed. Have a good evening.
I told John I like a man who writes his own council communication.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Very good.
2-1.
2-1, yeah.
Can I,